Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Persuading for Profits. This is the sales and marketing podcast that gives you the skills, the tools, the strategies you need to go out and crush it in your sales and marketing career. Thanks to Andy Meadows and everybody over at radioupdate.com for sponsoring us, for hosting us. We do appreciate them. They are your one-stop resource for all things radio industry online. Go check them out. And got a special guest here with me today. Very excited to have this guy on, a sales and marketing consultant, Mr. Shane Nichols, and he's the author of the new book, which really is what caught my attention with Shane, White Collar Prospecting. Shane, it's great to have you on the show today.
A pleasure to be here, Brent. Thanks for having me.
I got to tell you, once I dug into your book, I first of all your heroes are my heroes. Dan Kennedy, David Sandler, those to me are the most overlooked secret weapons, I think, in all of sales and marketing. I think Dan Kennedy's probably getting a lot more nowadays because of the internet. It is direct response advertising, most of it. He's probably more popular. Russell Brunson's made him more popular. But David Sandler is so overlooked and such a great resource for salespeople who don't like being the hypey, pitchy cheerleader salespeople.
Absolutely. I think my first, revelation in sales was Sandler. I went through that training. I had no money. I just started working at a big TV station in Indianapolis, and I really wanted to maximize that opportunity. It was a good time to be in TV. There was a lot of money to be made, and I just wanted to set myself apart from everyone else. And so I went through Sandler training. It was like $10,000. I mean, I had no money. I just had a credit card. And so I think that commitment to that training at that time, because I didn't have the money and I put it on a credit card, it really committed me to learning it, right? Like I went to class, studied everything, and it really did set me apart. But, later, it was 2017, like 20 years later when I discovered Dan Kennedy. And like at that time when I discovered Dan, it was his book, No BS Direct Marketing, and then his book, No BS Selling in today's selling environment, his sales book. That's what opened my eyes to the prospecting challenge. Like I knew I could sell. Like get me in a room, I can sell. I feel like most of us, senior salespeople who've been in it a while know how to sell. It's just getting the appointment, getting the attention of. It's that process of getting in front of a prospect rather than what you do when you're in the meeting. So that's what Dan opened my eyes to, and that's really what that's the rabbit hole I've been down since.
Yeah, and you say that in your book, which I think is it's so true. It has now become that the hardest part of the selling process is just getting the appointment.
Yeah.
And in fact, you do a really good job in there, and you break down all the sales calls that the average business owner probably gets every day. And it's like 30 of them, minimum. And so and I don't think a lot of salespeople, especially new ones, really understand that. They think they're kind of the only one with some novice idea, dropping in on these people, and they're getting pitched and approached all the time. And I thought that was a really good, just acknowledgement. I don't think anybody ever acknowledges that really anymore. The hardest part is just getting the doggone appointment these days. You've been in sales a long time. Is that something that's really significantly changed over the years?
Yeah, it has. And I was lucky. So after I was in television, I went to work at an ad agency. And it just so happened because I was the only guy in that agency who had worked in TV and radio and newspaper, I became kind of de facto media director for them. And so that led me to having to meet with a lot of salespeople just like me, right? So here I was face to face with the old Shane, the selling TV, selling radio guy, and it was terrible. I mean, I would get 100 calls a day. This was a national agency, and so we were getting calls from all over the country representing grocery stores. And they were terrible. I mean, that no one had any kind of offer of value. I really got to see, what a buyer goes through, someone who's in demand, right? And so like that really opened my eyes to needing to step up your game in how you approach a buyer, because there are more people selling to buyers. It's corporate consolidation. There are just smaller groups of companies,
Right.
buying more as private equity rolls up companies, as companies get bigger. There are just more things to sell. You look at the landscape of just media, in the 90s, there were 5 network TV stations and there was cable. There was no Facebook, LinkedIn. So as media proliferates, connected TV, digital options, Google search, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. If you're just selling advertising, you're now competing with 20 or 30 different competitors. Add to that the printer, the banker, the uniform salesperson, the
Right.
janitorial supply. I mean, it just goes on, and all these people are doing the same thing. They're sending an email and they're making a cold call. And I'm telling you, that just doesn't work like it used to.
Yeah, and that's something. A few things to unpack there. Yeah, one of the things is that, and what I noticed too, from I guess the working with companies on the B2C end, is that because there's so many options, it's so much harder to stand out from the crowd. I worked for a company 2015, kind of brought them into the digital age, because before that, all they had done as a home services company, their game every year was to buy the back page of the Yellow Pages. That was it. It was a ton of money. I mean, whenever Clapton came or Aerosmith came through town, they were backstage. The Yellow Pages loved these guys. But, it was a ton of money, but it was easy. It was like nobody else is going to slide onto that back cover with you. If a company was not in business when the Yellow Pages deadline went to press, they weren't going to be found for 2 more years. It was so easy to get separation. Now there's not only so many places, there's so much ad inventory available that I think it's hard for companies, on the flip side of that, I'm spending, but I'm not really getting separation. So I think that's all kind of really interesting part of the same game. And I mean, what do you see from the well, let me finish the other thing I was going to unpack from that last statement before, is when you do, like you do the one cold call and you send the one email, you're playing the game that Sandler helps you break, because you're entering into that predictable script, right? And to me, the greatest thing about Sandler was he kept people from. He gave you ways to break the script and actually get through to somebody that was a decision maker, and actually get through to somebody that they could make a decision. Otherwise, salespeople, it's the biggest frustration is they get stuck in that same thing as, hey, can I speak to, or hey, can I do this, or whatever, and they can't get around that. I mean, what is that something that has gotten worse over time, do you think, or is it about the same as it's always been?
Yeah, I think, younger, newer sellers, if they don't have training, they don't have a process, right? I think experienced sellers kind of intuitively know what to ask, what to say. It's are you the decision maker? Who else is involved in this process? Is there real pain here? Digging into that. And then is there, money to fix that? Is there a budget, right? I mean, those are the 3 things that Sandler taught me, and that, I intuitively, am zeroing in on right off the bat. I think newer sellers, are more focused on the vanity things, like, trying to just be nice. They end up looking like being nice and chasing, right? Always chasing, always, at the courtesy of their prospect, whereas, what they're really doing is just positioning themselves as just another salesperson who looks like a vulture sitting up there on a wire looking down on their prey,
Right.
whereas Sandler, really wants you to break that, and almost position yourself like, I'm not sure I want to do business with you.
Right.
So let me learn more about you to see if we're a good fit. That's the kind of the Sandler angle that I really enjoyed, that perspective.
Yeah, and so salespeople, they're so excited to finally get a presentation, to finally get an appointment. It's the what's the Sandler saying? Don't spill your popcorn in the lobby, you know,
Yes,
and
exactly.
and that's what's happening. And I feel that salespeople today, they perceive the job as being nice and having all the answers instead of having all the questions, right? And that's the hardest. Just I know your book is mainly about prospecting and marketing, but from your perspective, how do you get over that fear of asking those questions that get to pain? Well, I mean, what tips do you probably have for salespeople that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think it just takes practice. I think in anytime you begin a job, a sales job, I mean, it's going to take you about a year to figure stuff out. Like, what are your, what are your most qualified, best prospects? What are the common things that your product or service is helping to solve that really makes you unique? These are all things, you're learning in that year, and you're practicing on a variety of different prospects, and you're wasting a lot of time, but in a lot of those cases, you're learning and honing those skills. It's just reps, right? It's like,
Yeah,
get me in front of as many people as possible. And, if you really want to succeed, you're going to learn from every sales call and get better at those kind of three buckets of pain, budget, decision-making process, right? You're going to get to the point where you're not even going to call on someone unless you're likely to, just your qualification process really makes you more intuitive on that search for new business. Does that make sense?
totally, and that completely jives with Dan Kennedy too, right? In your headline, you tell who you want to attract, and you tell who you don't want to attract too.
Exactly.
And I think people are afraid to do that. Now, so you got to experience live from both sides, from the person answering the phone, from all the salespeople, and from the salesperson making all the calls. And you arrived at a spot where you really tried some different things. Tell me about, and I'm not sure we're chronologically in your career where this happened, but tell me about the how you first developed your first sales letter for prospecting.
Yeah. So when I left the agency, I went back to work at a big TV station, and I was doing a lot of new business development. And man, it was just so much harder, Brent, than I remembered like 10 years before. And
Right.
that's kind of, like I started reading Dan Kennedy, and I started practicing. I think his book, the Ultimate Sales Letter, right? So that's the book that helped me kind of craft that first sales letter. And I had a list of prospects that I knew were good. They were spending money on advertising, but they weren't responding to the emails, the phone calls. And so, I think my first test, it was like a 4-page sales letter. I went to like 14 prospects. I hand wrote everything on the envelope. The TV station was happy to pay for the postage and the paper. They're like not even thinking. I promise. I remember like no one thought it would work. They're like, sure, go ahead, mail some stuff. Whatever you need. Good luck. But that sales letter was essentially just my pitch on paper. It was nothing special. I had no good writing expertise. It was just the angle I took there was value investing. I'm like, there are a lot of digital, fads going on right now. And if like you're a value investor like Warren Buffett and you're looking at the landscape of advertising and you want to find a good, return on your advertising investment, broadcast television is a good place to be still. And this is the best time to do it because there's so much other digital distress, kind of like the tech boom, where anything online, investors threw money at. And that same thing was happening in the advertising world. Anything digital, they just throw money at. Whereas some of the tried and tested methods like broadcast TV were getting forgotten. So that was kind of the angle, the pitch, and that resonated, with quite a few prospects. And it's the same thing I would say in an email or in a phone call, but the delivery method of the mail broke through, another barrier, right? And, I got people that responded to the letter. I didn't even have to follow up. That's what really opened my eyes to, the value of direct mail. You think about it, Brent, there are only a handful of ways to get the attention of a prospect, right? I mean, there's email, there's the phone. You can canvas or go door to door, which is very impactful still if you're a regional rep and you can stop in on a retail customer or something like that, or a doctor's office, but it's laborious, time consuming. So you got those three. You've got LinkedIn. Everyone hates it when you treat LinkedIn like email, right? So that's not a great place to be approaching them. And then you've got direct mail, right? I mean, those are the ways to get in front of clients, and people forget about the mail as the least cluttered place you can be right now, in my opinion.
It's so great. You quote Dan Kennedy in your book. I think it's like show up where the other people aren't. It's something like that. It's the exact. I don't know what the quote is. Very cool. And it's such a great place to be right now. And again, we're hosted on RadioUpdate.com. Radio is kind of an identity crisis, whatever. It may be the ultimate place though where other people aren't right now. And local radio with your local DJs, with your local people. And, I'm in East Texas. We have the rodeo report on the noon show. We got the funeral report, but if you're local and you advertise on there, you're people will know you, and it's just easy branding. And so, one question for you on that is that is a little bit of the tension I feel is that there's a between branding versus direct response, and it seems to me these days that you probably kind of want to do a little bit of both. What's your thought on that?
I couldn't agree with you more. I just wrote a LinkedIn post yesterday, and basically what really got my attention locally is there's this very successful plumbing company, and they have billboards everywhere. And I know they're not supported by co-op. There's no manufacturer on the billboard. They're paying, this is money out of their pocket. I estimate they spend $100,000 a year on billboards. And here's what the billboard says. It's their logo, and then it says, "This is our fall billboard." And I'm saying that is a complete waste of money. I'm not saying from a branding perspective it's not branding them and it's not cute, but you could just as easily add an offer below that. Download our free report, the 3 plumbing mistakes everyone makes. There's a way to add an offer to any branding effort. And unless you're Coca-Cola or Nike, you just can't afford to be spending your hard-earned, local advertising dollar on branding. And that's really what Dan's first book and most popular book, the No BS Direct Marketing book, is about. That's really opened my eyes, is that you can brand, but have an offer along with it, right?
Yeah. I can't remember his exact saying. It's like, don't buy branding, buy direct response and get branding for free or something. Get branding as whatever comes along with that.
Exactly.
I do agree with that. So this day and age, what do you recommend for salespeople? I mean, so you're going to have, I guess we're mainly talking B2B here. What is the best way to get in front of your audience? What do you recommend? What do you see if you were starting over in any given industry? I mean, what would you do?
Yeah, I think, I'll speak to the salespeople who work for kind of old school, traditional sales organizations. And these are the ones that I've always worked for. It's like they depend on the brand to open doors. Big TV stations, big radio stations. I worked in college sponsorship. You would rely on big school brand names to open doors, and that's fine. That helps. It no longer is the solution. Again, there's just too much noise. So I have kind of a system that I created, and I implemented this while I was in sponsorship sales at Ball State University. Ball State is located in a very economically depressed area. It's poor, right? Mm-hmm. And the athletics program that I sold for is not good at anything. No one cares. No one goes to the games. I'm an alum, and while they are great at educating athletes, and they do not do what Texas does, be good at football and basketball and sell a lot of tickets, and that results in a lot of sponsorship. So faced with those kind of challenges, and this will work even better when you don't have those challenges. I started with developing a piece of education that I can market, and you call that a lead magnet. And so what a lead magnet is just simply like a report, a study, a book, whatever you can find or create. And what I created was the 10 ways a local business could measurably profit from sponsorship. It was like a report. And so instead of calling cold and saying, hey, meet with me so I can learn about your business, I would market that report. It was a glorified PowerPoint, but it did show 10 examples of, here's Papa John's. And every time Ball State wins a basketball game, fans get half-price pizzas. And 1,000 fans call them every time Ball State wins. That's a measurable piece of proof. So I would just market this proof, and I would say, hey, let me share with you the 10 ways people are measurably profiting. And that was a piece of bait that was a lot more, that I got a lot more response than just asking for appointments. So, I encourage people to develop some sort of lead magnet, some sort of piece of education where you can teach a prospect or share proof. It's likely your company already has something that you can adopt. In my case, I just created a glorified PowerPoint, and I spent $100 on a designer to create that report. And so I was able to market it, in direct mail. I was able to share that with the Chamber of Commerce and send out email blasts. It gives you something to advertise. I advertised it on the radio. So I think having some kind of bait, some kind of offer beyond just meet with me, learn about your business is the most important thing. That's, I think, the biggest revelation I got from the world of Dan Kennedy, is offer something to educate.
So you, even via direct mail, you had people raise their hand. You didn't just send this out. You didn't just blast, print it up, and send it out to a whole bunch of people. Yeah.
So in a letter, I would have my sales pitch, and then as a PS, or I would devote an entire page to the cover of the report. And if you would like me to share this with you on a Zoom or in person, I'd be happy to do it in a 20-minute call. And I would get a lot more response to that than anything else that you can offer a person, other than maybe free tickets to the game.
Oh, that's very cool. So it's kind of like free tickets to the game. It's kind of like when I was growing up. I grew up in Arlington, and the Texas Rangers were terrible, but it was always still cool to go see the New York Yankees. You know what I'm saying? It's maybe if your home team's not good, you can still pitch the other team that's coming into play.
Yeah, you use what you got. I mean, if you're selling, uniform cleaning services for Cintas or something like that, you don't have cool tickets to give away. You have to come up with something different to differentiate yourself within that industry, something that positions yourself as a thought leader, a leader in educating prospects and how to buy that product or service. But if you're selling sports and you have tickets and that gets you a meeting or a chance to talk to that prospect, you use whatever you got. Absolutely.
So you mentioned the system, and I've really been paying more attention to systems lately. And what if you were starting over again today? and you had to your sales job relied on you getting in front of prospects. What would your system be, or what's the one that you would recommend for a lot of people, just as far as a daily method of operation, daily, weekly, monthly? I mean, what would that look like for you?
Yeah, I have 2 consulting clients that I'm implementing, some kind of system like you described. They're how they go to market to get new business, right? And so it starts for both of them with some kind of a lead magnet or an offer to educate, or in one case, an offer to embed themselves in their business, just an offer that will be appealing, right? And then It's about, who do we market this offer to? Then it's about, and I think a lot of people from a prospecting standpoint overlook this, is it's building a list of ideal prospects, right? It's rather than haphazardly going after whoever seems attractive today based on something your boss said or something you read in the business journal. It's a list of people that are ideal prospects. And I like to have, in most situations, 50 to 100 of those. Okay. Now, when I sold advertising, it was easy to get a list of people who spent money on advertising. One of my clients helps big companies save money on their telecom bill. So we go find companies that spend more than $25,000 a month on telecom services. And you can pull that list from a variety of sources. So that becomes our list. What is your list? And then once you know the who, then you start marketing to them. And I like to start with sending them a letter at least once a month. You don't have to be an expert at writing letters. Just put your pitch on a piece of paper, make that gesture, put that stamp on an envelope, send that letter, and then that letter becomes your hook for follow-up. Then you follow up a week later with your email. You refer the letter that no one else sent them, not any one of your competitors or the 100 other people calling on them. And you probably aren't going to hear from them. That's okay, because a week later we're going to call, refer the letter, refer to the email. It's a very strict cadence, a weekly kind of follow-up, a letter, an email, a phone call, and then you're kind of taking a week or 2 off, and then another letter hits, a phone call, an email, and that kind of cadence will, I think by month 3, you'll get a response from a lot of those people. And if you only cold called and cold emailed that same list, you would get about 1 to 3% response. But it probably would take you a lot longer. If you commit to sending a letter a month and following up, I think you're going to at least triple that response rate. I experienced a response rate of around 20% by month 6 in a similar kind of effort every time I did it.
That is amazing.
That makes sense?
Oh my gosh, yeah, totally. And you could even, your game could be just come up with 100 new prospects every week, and you just got that cycle going, right?
Yes.
Here's this week's letter, here's this week's letter, this week's letter, and just keeping track of that. And just curious, are you handwriting the address on those letters?
Well, that's what I love about direct mail. You can outsource all of this, right? And so I presently do, because I have a manageable workload, I do the copywriting for 2 clients. I write all their letters, all their emails, all their follow-up scripts. But I outsource all the mailing. So we take that list, send it to the mailing company. I send the sales letter. I tell them how I want that letter to look, how I want it to arrive at a prospect's address, in a personalized manner. And they do the rest. And so that really streamlines it. What you're creating are kind of like evergreen marketing assets. Those sales letters, a year later, you can use the same one you sent. And they're not going to know the difference. You've now created something that you continually send, continually outsource to the company, and keep hitting these lists. All while you spend more time, on warm targets, people who have agreed to meet with you. More importantly, your existing clients. We so often spend so much time chasing new business that we neglect the opportunities that exist within our own clients, our people that are trusting us with their money and we're not even trying to upsell them, right? So that's really what this effort's about. Having a system frees you up to do more and look inward on your existing clients more.
And you mentioned in the book, sometimes you'll send a first class, sometimes you'll send a priority mail, sometimes you'll send a FedEx. Do you do that with your list? Where it's like, hey, these people I want to send them a FedEx. Do you segment your list of 100 people that, hey, these people are gonna get the regular letter, these people get the priority, etc., stuff like that?
Yes, I would say, like, when you have a whale type of a prospect, a big, something that would be just, transformative for your budget, your goal, your company, those people are worth spending more money on, right? I mean, a letter is going to cost you $2 to $3 per letter. A FedEx is going to cost you $14. And so what if you sent a FedEx 6 months in a row and you got a $500,000 sale out of it? Is that worth it? More than worth it, right?
Right.
That's what we're talking about here. It's when you invest a little money and you add some personalization to these mail or FedEx direct marketing efforts, you really get the attention of even CEOs of the largest companies.
That is great. That's so amazing. And it's so simple, right? People would rather spend a crap ton of money on ads that, may or may not work. And honestly, you can't even really track them the right way. You're just taking everybody's word for it that that's the impressions you got and that's everything and, whatever. Yep. What role does content creation in social media, what role does that play in your system?
Yeah, so like I look at prospecting on two fronts. There's the outbound effort, like our active effort to get the attention of our list of prospects. That's direct mail and our follow-up, right? Email, all the channels, right? I look at LinkedIn more as an inbound effort. Like, I don't advise anyone pitch a client on LinkedIn. I'm going to focus on LinkedIn because it's B2B, right? I'm going to suggest you connect with a prospect, invite them to follow your company page, but the spirit and what works in social media is sharing something educational, is more about you positioning yourself as someone who knows what they're doing, right? And so if you're just an individual and you don't have a company that has any kind of LinkedIn strategy and you don't want to create content, then just share something relevant to your industry, an article, and give your take on that in 1 or 2 sentences 2 or 3 times a week. That's the 2 parts of social media is like connect with your prospects, don't chase them there, but do share relevant content to your industry wherever you find it, or if you want to write it yourself, that's great. Personally in my consulting business, I post 6 times a week. I create content. I'm committed to that effort, and I've been doing that for about 200 days straight. And wow. It's been, it's a slow roll, a slow amount. It's not like a revelation didn't happen, but I steadily gain followers and engagement. I've attracted a couple clients from doing it. It builds over time. And what it also is like when a prospect gets your outbound effort, they're likely to look you up. And if they see you're on LinkedIn, you have your shit together, excuse my cussing, and they see that you're sharing relevant trade articles and giving your take on things, that's credibility building. And that's really how you want social media to work in this entire process. If you're a company, every company I've worked for either didn't do anything on LinkedIn or they treated LinkedIn as an HR tool, right? They would just share culture type things, which is great. You should do some of that, but you're wasting an opportunity to develop leads for your salespeople by not showing thought leadership on the sales side. And so that's, I have a cold to warm system for outbound, and I have a system I call the bridge for inbound. And you should be doing a little bit of both.
Do you put calls to action in any of your social media posts? Do you do posts that are kind of curiosity driven to drive a call to action, or is it strictly just kind of infomercial? What am I trying to say? I was trying to say infotainment maybe, or but educational.
So yeah, I don't. Some like I invested in courses and a lot of books about how to go about LinkedIn. And most experts will say you don't want to be a hard sell on there, and I agree with that. But in my mind, the very least, I want to help build my list, an email list. And so that's what I use LinkedIn for. And so I will share something relevant to B2B salespeople or B2B sales organizations. And then at the end of that, I will offer to educate. And so I will offer a free copy of my book, whitecollarprospecting.com. I'll offer two or three other lead magnets that are educational in nature. I have a quiz. I have two other books that I wrote a long time ago that I'll share sometimes. So there's always an offer to I have an email newsletter every week called The Sovereign Seller. And so I'll offer, 3 of my 6 posts a week are devoted to promoting and supporting that email. And so I'm trying to drive subscribers to that. I'm educating and offering to educate. I'm not really offering to sell you anything. I'm just offering you to inviting you to come into my world. That's my offer every time I post.
Nice. I like that. You said that right now you're able to handle the workload, but for your clients that maybe can't really do that, what do you have any? Do you at all make use of AI or anything in either the content creation or the cycle? What's your approach to AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of helping me create content. But here's the thing, you can't rely on it to write everything for you, or it's just going to sound like AI babble.
Yeah.
You look at LinkedIn right now and you read posts from people that are posting, a lot of it sounds the same, even from different industries. So this is where, again, investing in education and coaching, I use AI to help me. I always have the idea. I bring the idea and the angle of the article and kind of the bare bones of what I'm going to write. And then I help it and I ask it to refine it, to kind of edit it, maybe tell me what I'm doing wrong, tell me what I'm doing right. And here's the latest thing that has been pretty helpful to me is that I've created synthetic focus groups based on ideal client profiles. So for one client.
So you created, so you have kind of an idea of your avatar of your ideal client.
Yep.
And you've created a focus group. Tell me about AI synthetic focus groups.
Yeah, so you start with, you want 4 or 5 ideal client profiles. And so you can plug those in to Chat GTP and I have a prompt that will help me create an ideal client profile. Once I have that, then I say, create me a synthetic focus group based on these profiles. And then once I have that that group created, I then run copy anything I write by that group. And it's scary, it's weird. You'll get actual feedback from each segment of that group on what they like, what they don't like. And that helps me create better content that's relevant to our target. But without the original human thought, the knowledge, the research, the actual experience, you cannot write great stuff in AI. You cannot let AI do everything for you. You've got to bring it the ideas. And most of the time, when I'm finished with what it wants me to, or what it produces for me, I'm making a lot of edits before it gets published or sent. But that helps. That focus group thing is very helpful and insightful.
Man, that is so cool. Yeah, I did. I had a meeting the other day and kind of laid out my proposal, I think, in AI. I think it was in Claude. And I'm like, if kind of honed it the way I wanted it. It's like at the end, I just said, "Well, what are your thoughts on this, or what do you think of this? Honest opinion." And the insight I got back was incredible. I mean,
Absolutely.
it was like, oh my gosh, some of the things it picked it, and it turned out to be spot on. Um, and then, but you're right. I think, golly, when you first started, it was kind of cool to have it just churn out an email for you in 2 seconds. But now they all sound the same, and there's like
Totally.
it's like it's very limiting very quickly. And especially, you probably did too. Maybe you read the old Gary Halbert letter online, or you read
Oh yeah.
Dan
Love.
Kennedy stuff, and they all talk about just copying down good sales letters by hand. Just because
Absolutely.
you learn how to write that way. You literally learn
Yeah.
where to put the period, where to put the dash, where to put the ellipsis, whatever you want to do. How to write the bullet points. One last question: do you make use of any paid ads? Is that any part of your strategy, or just not really?
Yeah, I mean, direct mail would be an example of that. You're
Yeah.
paying. That's a one to many advertising tactic. Um, yeah, I mean, in B2B, you're limited, right? It just depends on where you are. Like,
Yeah.
what an ad in the business journal work? It could. I think what I spent money on and had the best return on investment was the Chamber of Commerce. So it depends on what city you're in, but there are very strong chambers. The one in Muncie where Ball State was had 700 members in a small town. That was basically every business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Right.
I bought email blasts. I bought opportunities to speak, publicly, one to many opportunities that were very affordable that put me in front of a lot of prospects. And then I would offer something. I would speak or share knowledge to build credibility, and then I would offer my educational lead magnet to get response. And that worked really well for me in Muncie, and it worked anywhere, really.
That is so great. Well, thank you. We're kind of coming up on time here. I think we went
Yeah.
a little bit longer than we anticipated. Thank you very much for sticking around. Thank you for your time, Shane. I love this system. I love everything about it. I love that you mix offline with online. I love that it feels like you have a lot more control over the process, the way you do things.
Absolutely.
And I really like that. Somebody, again, the book is White Collar Prospecting. Highly recommend it. You can get it off of Shane's LinkedIn page. And Shane, if somebody wants to work with you, do you have other resources? Do you have a course, or do you have webinars you do, or can they take you? How do they become a client? Just tell me what you got.
Yeah, I would just recommend anyone. I have the book for free, whitecollarprospecting.com. If you want to reach out to me, I don't have any courses right now or anything that it's very, I'm just selective about who I want to work with and where I'm spending my time.
Yeah.
But Shane at whitecollarprospecting.com or connect with me through LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk and chat about anything. That'd be about it.
I think the book is a course in itself. I think between the book and just your LinkedIn posts, with as prolific as you are, people can get a real education, and it's not something complex you recommend here. It's just doing the work, following through, and it's very good. It puts all the power, just like Sandler did. It gives power back to the salesperson. It gives power back to the marketer. It's a wonderful system, and way to go.
I appreciate that, Brent. Thanks for having me on. It was great.
Oh, thank you for being here. That's it for this episode of Persuading for Profits, man. If you listen to this one, you got information on a good one. Go out and put it to use in your sales and marketing career. Thanks again to everybody over at Radio Update, and we will see you next time. Have a great week. Bye bye.